So we have got user data in our controller. It is in request body. We have received that from client to server. Now it's time to save to the database. So we need to save this user. So for that, we need to first create a user schema to define the properties for the user. So when you create a user, you want to have certain properties for that user. For example, user might have name, email, password, things like that. So you will write that in your schema. So every time you save any data coming from the request body, only those properties that you have added to your schema will be saved in the database. So the properties that are allowed to be saved in the database will be saved. So from front end, for example, if you're sending more than name, email, and password, maybe you are sending additional information. Doesn't matter, that will not be saved. Only whatever is in your schema that will be saved. So we're going to use mongoose to create a model using these schemas, which will make it extremely easy to interact with the database later. So let me close this for now. Let me close all this. So here in server folder, you want to create a new directory called models. New folder, models, and here we're going to create our very first model, user model, user.js, and this is where we're going to write our schema. So think of models as a table in your database. So you can interact with your database using these models, which you will see how we're going to use very soon. So first let's import mongoose. From mongoose, we want to destructure schema from mongoose, so we can do that. Const schema with capital S from mongoose. Okay, you could also access mongoose dot schema, but I think this destructuring is a bit more easier. Okay, so let's do that, and then let's write our schema. So const user schema equals to, we're going to put our schema in this variable user schema, and to create a new schema we use new keyword, so new operator, and use the schema that we get with mongoose. So this is a function and it takes an object. So here we write our properties. For example, let's start with name will be the type of string, and email, so you can just have one. If you have just one type, then you can just leave it like so, but if you want to add more than one, then you can use this object syntax as well. So let's use this one. So type is going to be a string. We want to use trim as well, so trim true, so it will remove any extra white space you get in the beginning or the end of the string. And then also let's make it required. So we want to make sure we get the username. If not, we cannot create a new user. Okay, so if we don't get, we should be receiving some kind of error message, which we can write here. Name is required. Okay, so that's for name. Let's copy this, comma, paste here. Let's use this for email. So email also is going to be the type of string, trim true, required, yeah, email is required, and our email has to be unique as well. Okay, so we cannot save two users with the same email, so email should be unique. So unique true. Next one, we're gonna add password. So the type of string and required true. We also want to make sure we get minimum at least 6. Okay, so it should be at least 6 characters, and maximum also you can write here, let's say 64. So password should be minimum 6 and maximum 64 characters. Next one, we want to add stripe account ID, and leave it as empty string. We will be using these later, so I will be explaining about this one later when we want to make user, when we connect them to Stripe. Okay, so Stripe seller, it's going to be empty object. We will get this information from Stripe. Once we get that, we will save in the database, but until then we just leave them here. Stripe session empty object. All right, so make sure you have this camel case and underscore, everything is as it is, just so that you don't have any issues later. So with this, that is pretty much all we need for our user schema. Now once you have this schema, you can export so that we can start using this one. So export default mongoose.model. Now using this model function, we can pass the model name, the user, with a capital U, and it will be based on this user schema that we just write here. All right, so this way you can create a user schema, define what properties will be there, and then you can export as a mongoose model so that we can easily use mongoose model user to interact with the database. All right, now before I finish, let's do one more thing here. So you can see this new schema function take this object, and you can also pass the second option here, the timestamps. If you say true, make sure it is all lowercase. If you do that, then each time user is created or updated, it will automatically add two fields in the database. One is created at date and another is updated at date. Okay, so you want to have them, so make sure you have the timestamps as well. All right, so this is all we need for our user schema.